Oops, that's not what I wanted. Let's go back. And we are live. Hi.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good.
It is.
Thank you so much for having me on.
It's so great to have you on. This was a really interesting kind of sequence of events that led to this. This was one of those situations where you and I happened to emerge on a cafe at the same time at Lofty down in Little Italy here in San Diego. And then we started in conversation about something and I was like, stop talking.
We could sit here for hours. I was also about to start my work day, so it was like, oh, what a way to start the day.
And it was one of those situations of, hey, listen, I think we should have this conversation with other people listening, because this is a conversation I have with so many women in coffee and with so many men, to be honest with you, because a lot of people are wondering. A lot of the things that you were talking to me about and asking me about were like a lot of people trying to know how to navigate their way through it. So I am just going to take care of that. So thank you for doing this.
Of course.
This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening, this is Siri Simran.
Yes.
Am I saying it right?
That's my first name, Siri Simran.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. So that's not your last name or surname, as we say. So what's your last name?
My last name is Khalsa.
Khalsa.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I did try to figure that out on Google. I know you as Siri, and I'm like, there are now two Siris in my life. But so you're a roaster.
Yes.
And you are a coffee trainer.
Yes.
For Lofty Coffee here in San Diego. Personally, one of my favorites here in San Diego.
So happy to hear.
And that's they
try hard.
They are not consulting clients of mine. They are not elixir dealers. Nothing. They happened to be one of the first cafes that just made me really, really happy when I moved to America, and that was purely because of the service.
That's one of the things we definitely try to do the best, because. Just to touch on a little bit, our ethos has to do with community and authenticity and quality. And I'm sure you're used to this because in Australia it seems that coffee shops and what we think of as specialty coffee is not just coffee, but it's also an experience, and it's also about the food and pastry and the pairing of the two.
Everything.
And I feel really fortunate to work with a company that, to me, feels like it's doing it right.
Yeah, because the coffee community here in San Diego is young and exciting.
Yeah, it really is. Going to any of the events, you're just like, there's a lot of really energetic, passionate, excited people.
Yeah. And I look at it from the perspective of, sure, I see what's happening now, but I also see what's coming in 10 years.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to be based here, and I found out yesterday I'm going to be based here another 2 years.
That's awesome.
I'm very happy about that.
Does that mean that after the 2 years, you might need to go somewhere else?
No, my visa got renewed.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
nice. That's a big deal.
Yeah. So it was one of those things of, because Trump is going through the process of reassessing all the visas.
Yeah.
And so we didn't know what he was going to do with my class of visa. And my parents are Syrian. So I had no idea what the So with this administration, you just never know.
Yeah, that's really scary.
My lawyer and I, shout out to Karim, you fucking badass, but we had no idea which way this was going to go, and anyone I spoke to was like, it's at this point nobody knows. So I found out yesterday. We were very stoked, and I'm like, wow, now I can make plans for, because I know where I'm going to be living for the next 2 years.
Wow, that's really big. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm happy to hear.
Thank you. So am I. And a lot of my clients are very happy.
They're like, oh, believe me.
It was so sweet, the people that I had told, and people would constantly be checking in and, have we got approval yet? Have we got approval yet? So it was really lovely.
Sweet.
So now that I know that I'm going to be here in the next couple of years, and I don't know anywhere I want to live more than San Diego. So, I mean, if there was somewhere I wanted to live more than San Diego, I would go there. But I'm really starting to build roots here. And more than anything, I'm noticing such an exciting industry happening here around coffee, and I want to be a part of helping to influence that and mold it, both with Mapa Forward and with Elixir. You know, anyone out there that's looking for what's going to be the next coffee town, come to San Diego.
I completely
come to
agree.
San Diego.
It seems like we're really doing like awesome things between like people having wholesale accounts with really interesting roasters, and then more roasteries popping up. It's just really wild, honestly.
It really is, and the idea that it could go any way. Like, we've got some great people with great business sense here. You know, we've got the Bird Rocks, and we've got the James Coffee, and we've got Steady State, we've got Lofty, and we've got the places that have got just single shops. You know, the Hawthorns. Shout out to Hawthorn.
Yeah.
Hawthorn, and we've got Copa Vita that are doing great things as well.
I hear they're about to expand.
They are. They're doing amazing stuff. Shout out to Steve and the team. They're doing just great things. And really trying to elevate the experience that is specialty coffee here in San Diego. Yeah. I'd like to take that a step further, and I was talking about this at the town hall that we had. I'd like to now, and I was literally waiting on my visa getting approved to start this project. I want to bring together the owners and create a coffee chamber of commerce.
That's awesome.
And it would be owners of coffee companies, whether it's cafes or beverage companies or roasters or whatever it is. And I'd like us to start thinking about creating a coffee festival.
We need that. Oh my goodness.
But see, you guys can't do that.
Exactly.
So that needs to be the business end of it that takes care. We've got to fund it. We've got to organise it. We've got to get permits. We've got to look at putting something together like that with a focus of how do we bring more people to specialty coffee, not specialty coffee people to specialty coffee.
Right? And that's something I'm always talking. It's like almost like we need to convert these people.
Right.
It's like a conversion, and like how do we do that, and how do we make ourselves more approachable and more approachable, I think is a good word. Where
and,
it's just,
and accessible. I think that's the word that you were looking for. Because right now people look at I refer to that McDonald's commercial, you know, the one that I'm talking about. We really do run the risk of, as our industry evolves, I guess anywhere in the world, we don't want to be seen as that elitist, unapproachable,
or like alienating.
Exactly. And it's not a price thing. For fuck's sake, Starbucks are charging $6 for a flat white.
Yeah.
So this is not, I'm going to go to Starbucks, it's cheaper. No, this is one of those things of how do we make what we're doing more approachable to everybody?
Completely.
So that I had someone say to me the other day, I was in a lift, and they were like, so what do you do? And I'm like, I'm in the coffee industry. It's very hard to tell people what I do.
When they don't, you're like, you're in coffee? What does that mean?
Yeah, and especially because I own two businesses. They're like trying to get their head around it, like what Elixir is and what Mapa Forward is. I'm like, I'm just in coffee. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, you make like coffees for people? I'm like, no. He's like, and this guy turned around and said to me, are you into that fancy coffee, like lattes and things? And I'm like, wow, lattes are fancy coffee now.
It's awesome.
That's why we need a coffee festival,
totally.
a specialty coffee festival.
Yeah.
And so I would really like to, now that I have approval with my visa and I know I'm going to be here, the last thing I wanted was to start this and then have to drop the ball.
Totally.
And peace out and head back to Australia for a few months before I could come back. But now that I'm here, I'm going to Elliot from Steady State, and I have been talking about this a little bit, and he's like, we need to create some sort of a coffee council. Like, I think a chamber of commerce is more about what we're looking for, because we want to stimulate an economy here that is self-perpetuating, so that year on year it just continues to grow, and we can measure the growth of that. As our festival gets bigger, our industry sees the rewards of that.
Completely.
So
that's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes from that.
Anybody that's listening to this, please steal this idea. Anywhere around the US, anywhere around the world, just start a really small coffee festival, even if it's just 15 of the cafes, specialty coffee cafes in your area, and just put out tables and tell everyone you can about it and bring them to the table, so to speak, and get them to try it. And you'll notice that year on year something like that grows. The coffee festival in Australia, in Sydney, sorry, it's called the Aroma Festival. And hundreds of thousands of people go to it.
Wow.
It's one day and it's painstaking.
That's insane. That's so many people.
Right. But imagine if we had a specialty coffee festival. People would come from all around.
Yeah. How many people usually go to Expo? I've yet to go to Expo, but it seems like one of the bigger US coffee festivals.
It is. You should try and think about coming next year.
I really wanted to go this year. It just didn't really line up with work, but it's like so I competed this year in New Orleans, and I had an incredible experience, and I learned so much, and I didn't qualify for nationals, but it gave me this really great perspective of what I need to work on to make it there. And so that's the goal, to be there next year.
Fantastic.
Competing.
It's in Boston next year.
I hear it's going to be awesome.
I've never been to Boston, but I'm very excited to go. I want to talk about your competition a little bit. But before I say that, I will, you know this because you're the only person I've told this to, but we are going to be looking at by we I mean Map It Forward, and it will probably be Elixir that's contributing to this as well. But we're going to look at sponsoring a couple of people who attend our workshops on a regular basis. We're going to help them figure out what they want. Like, is it that they want to compete? Is it that they want more education? Is it that they're trying to go and move to another city and learn how to be a barista there? Do they want to do a coffee exchange with someone? So we're going to find a couple of people that regularly come to our workshops, and we're going to see how we can help them attain those dreams.
That's incredible.
Is there someone that they want to meet or they're dying to work with, and see if we can get them, even if it's a 2-week internship there, and we fund the wages if the other person doesn't.
So it's like a scholarship.
It will be a scholarship.
That's incredible.
It won't be like so we're going to fund somebody going to competition. It's not going to be that. It's like, what is it you're trying to achieve?
It's almost like getting these people who really have these ideas, almost like I could see it almost as them proposing like a plan of action for themselves to like better themselves within our industry.
And it's in alignment with our life currencies policy, or focused. So I will sit with that person, and if there's another specific mentor that they want to help them with this, we will find a way to make that happen. But I will sit down with them and spend time mapping their next year of how we're going to get them to where they're trying to get to. Oh, good.
I keep kicking Lee.
Kick me as much as you want. Trust me, the coffee industry has done that worse than you ever will. And I'm super grateful for it.
It makes us stronger.
Right? But yeah, that's something that we're going to look at doing. There's and it's not just for the millennial generation or the generation that's coming after you guys, Gen Z. This is for more mature entrants into our industry as well. There are people coming to our workshops that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s that are saying, I really want to get into specialty coffee and I have no idea how to do it. And so for me to be able to sit with them and say, because my first time working in anything to do with hospitality, so in specialty coffee.
Specialty coffee was your first introduction to that? Okay.
I'd never bust a table or anything. Growing up, the only jobs that I had were working with my parents. We had a gas station and we had a fleet of taxis. And so I would work there. I was like the 14-year-old who was behind the cash register, taking people's money and helping pump gas. Super cute. My little brother was like 11 when he started doing it. It was adorable. And then the other jobs that I had were all, I think I only really had one job before I left school, my degree, and that was when I was working in a lab. Okay. For anyone who just heard the doorbell, we're clearly at my apartment. And that was just a delivery, so this is real life.
It's great. It makes it more authentic.
It is more authentic. And And so what happened with that? What was I talking about?
We're talking about your experience before working in hospitality.
Yes. Yeah. So I was in a lab because I was doing a degree in genetics. Yeah. And then I went and worked in the corporate world. Other than that, I always had my own businesses. So I was tutoring, or I was, trying to come up with some crazy fucking business idea and trying to execute it. And then I left school and joined the corporate world. But other than that, I was always working for my parents, which I guess is where I got my business kind of ethic from. And because I came to coffee so late, 28.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask because it seems for me, I have pretty much a typical story where like college, okay, you were studying something you weren't very passionate about. I studied photography. I went to Parsons, the New School in New York. And if anyone's lived in New York, it's freaking crazy and fucking expensive. And I was working like 2 full-time jobs, and they happened to be in coffee. And I started at like what was it? It was a franchise Cafe Bene.
Okay.
Yeah. And like from there, I really just got obsessed. So I feel like I have the very typical...
What did you get obsessed with? Because for me, my obsession was with, like I loved coffee, don't get me wrong, but my obsession was learning how to be of service to people. Yeah.
So for me at first, it was definitely the craft because I was studying art and I am very crafty. I like to make things. And I just remember watching the baristas and just being like, that is cool, man.
Yeah, man.
It's fucking cool. And then I just started asking all of these questions. And then I realized I was loving the people that I was working with. And despite I was working in Union Square, so you got the fucking crazy customers.
I've been to Union Square. That shit is insane. Yeah. Sitting down and eating a sandwich on a park bench in Union Square is like... what the fuck could happen to me now? Yeah. Who is going to come up and talk to me?
I worked for a few other smaller coffee shops and learned just like the basics of working in a cafe, which then led me to working for Toby's Estate because I was like, okay.
Did you work for Toby's Estate?
Yeah.
Do you know my relationship with Toby's Estate?
No, I don't.
Toby, this is so fucking crazy. Like my mind is right now. This is so strange, Siri.
They really I can't say enough. Like I actually only worked there for like maybe 8 months before I moved here, but they set this foundation for specialty coffee for me, and that being service and really getting into training and education. And so like they set this foundation. I'm just like so thankful for them and that like they decided to hire me. I was like,
so let me tell you why this is a mindfuck. I was in the corporate world, and how this comes around to I joined the coffee industry at 28. So did you ever have the good fortune of meeting Toby?
I didn't. I think I came on, like he had like just visited, and then I came on and they're like, oh, you missed him.
So synchronicity is a massive part of my life. And I was in the corporate world, and one of my dear friends, Tracy Chung, shout out to Tracy. She's one of the great loves of my life as far as a sisterhood goes. Like she was the person who walked up to me one day and she said, I had told her previously that if I hear myself say, fuck this, I'm just going to quit this and join and go into coffee and find a job in coffee. I have to do it. And she said, a really strange thing happened to me today because she was late to work. I'm like, yeah. She says, remember how you said that thing that you were saying about how if
it happens, I have to do it.
Yeah. She said, so I had a flat tire today and this guy was driving down the street and just drove past me, stopped and drove back and asked me if I was okay. And I told him I had a flat tire. And so he got out of the car and he came and he changed my tire for me. And I got talking to him and was asking him what he was doing. And he said to me that he'd opened this cafe and had his own roastery. He quit his corporate job and he had gone and traveled for a couple of years and come back and decided he wasn't going to be a lawyer anymore. He was going to be in coffee. and he reminded me a lot of you. I'm like, oh. She's like, you should look him up. His name's Toby from Toby's Estate. The next week I quit.
No way.
The next week I quit. And the reason this gets really crazy is because I quit. I joined the cafe I went and got a job in a cafe. Was
it Toby's Estate?
No.
Okay.
They were serving Toby's Estate, and at that time, Toby's Estate was the shit. Like, this was the new big thing. This brand was exploding, and it was the first, like, for me, it was the first coffee I touched.
Yeah.
I'd never been in coffee before, and this was the first coffee I started working with. He then, fast forward 10 years from there, he became my mentor for my music business.
No way.
I was looking for a mentor, and because he was such an innovator in the specialty coffee world, and I was looking to innovate in the music industry because everything was collapsing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, I have these ideas, I really want to execute them, and I am really struggling because the things that I want to propose are things that people find absolutely fucking crazy. And so I don't know, I need an innovator to be a mentor for me. And he's like, yeah,
that's
absolutely.
super interesting to see how maybe someone in law and coffee could translate that to art and music.
Right. And it was that thing of, you don't really need somebody who's in an industry to help you figure out like the emotions behind being an innovator.
Yeah.
And so,
hey, we both got pushed into this crazy fucking world through Toby's Estate. That's awesome.
Shout out to Toby, you fucking beautiful human. He is, I can't wait to see him. Now that I have a visa for here, I can actually go home and go for a trip. Or he's everywhere these days, so I might just pick a country to see him.
On Instagram, I'm like, he's all over the place.
Yeah.
But they really like sparked that for me, where there's something about working in a cafe that's so simple, but so I'm such a hippie because I always like relate these things in my life kind of back to like meditation, but there's something
spiritual about it.
Yeah, and like, you know, sometimes you have those days where you're scrubbing toilets and you're just cleaning everything, and
like, this is like, one way to be of service. I just have to remember this.
But it really does. It all really ties into each other, and I've learned to like really appreciate all those like kind of shitty things about the job to like that really translate to the really amazing things about the job.
Yeah. And what are some of the amazing parts of the job for you?
Really the people, between the teams that I work with and then the guests that I'm serving, just these little connections that are made on the daily is just amazing. And I personally really love working as a team, and something we really believe in at Lofty is like, you can't do one without the other, and the teamwork is crucial. And as a trainer, that's something I think I actually do more training about, like building teams versus like pulling espresso, because I think something when you're really into the coffee industry, you learn, you know, coffee is easy. And
and Jared got into a lot of trouble for saying that.
Really?
Well, and he shouldn't have.
Yeah.
He got booed off stage at competition. I don't know if you heard. Well, he was telling this story at one of the Mapa Forward workshops, where he was the mentor. He got asked by one of the person that was interviewing him or whatever before competition, when they said, what do you think is the most difficult thing of coffee? I think that was the question, and he went, well, nothing. And
I wonder if that's a personality thing.
But he literally got booed by everybody in the crowd. Yeah, and now he says, I take a different perspective on it, because the answer isn't as simple as that. The answer isn't, and so I think what you're saying is correct. Like, making coffee is not difficult. Understanding everything that needs to go into that, like the mechanics, is not difficult. But giving enough fucks about particle size and water construction and equipment and having an open mind to tasting naturals and washed coffees and fermented coffee, like all of those things, that's the difficult part of coffee.
Completely, totally, and I completely agree with you on that.
So the mechanics of making an espresso are not difficult at all. The giving fucks, that's what makes a good barista. Yeah.
Those
coffee professional in general. Yeah. Like the same thing for a roaster. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, that's totally fine.
But the mechanics of roasting are not difficult. We did a fucking workshop where Scott taught me how to do it. Like the mechanics of it are not difficult at all, but giving fucks about development and about making sure that you have the right airflow and that you're using crop set and reading what the rate of rise is and knowing what a crash is and caring what a crash is and knowing what baked is and how it relates to all of those things. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I mean, something, and we do a seed to cup training at Lofty, and something that is a reoccurring topic throughout the entire training and then training into the cafe is attention to detail. And that is really the key to it all, where you can learn the mechanics, you can learn how to make a pour over, but if you don't care about the extra 30 seconds you're missing because you're just dumping water on top, like that's what makes specialty coffee.
Yeah, well, when I get asked what is specialty coffee, I often say, some people like to differentiate between what specialty coffee is from a actual coffee perspective and a cafe experience by saying there's a difference between specialty coffee and third wave.
Yeah.
My thing is that specialty coffee is an attitude. It's an all-encompassing attitude from the business, an attitude from the roaster, whether if you're a multi-roaster, and it's an attitude from the staff. Like the customers pick up on all those non-verbal cues.
Completely.
And that's what makes specialty coffee specialty coffee. This fucking arbitrary number that we attach based on what the sensory experience was of all the people that assigned to that number, that's great, don't get me wrong, but that can easily be fucked up by the roaster.
Yep.
So if we start with an 85 coffee or we start with a 95 coffee and the roaster fucks it up, well then you're getting a Starbucks experience if that's how you want to call specialty coffee, because Starbucks only buy specialty coffee grade.
But
you don't unless you're going to Starbucks Reserve, you're not getting what I consider a specialty coffee experience. I go to Lofty, I go to Copa Vida, I go to Steady State, I go to Hawthorne, I go to a lot of these places, and that's just talking about our local coffee community, and I get a specialty coffee experience.
Completely.
Not just because they're making a pour over, but because they know the language, they know how to figure out what I actually want, and I want to hope that they're not going to judge if I order a tea. Or I find that specialty coffee shops are far more likely to judge me if I order a tea. I know, it's sad.
It is, because I think like it's so good. And I think Lofty, we get really nice teas, and I love our presentations for them. We use like a nice little teapot, glass, refill your hot water,
which you shouldn't do if it's a caffeinated tea anyway. If it's a herbal, I get it. But enough about that. Tell me about competition.
Yeah, so this was like so random, honestly.
Like how did you decide that you wanted to compete?
So I have I've lived in San Diego almost 3 years now, and I would say like when I started working for Toby's Estate, I kind of like watched a few videos here and there. When I moved here, I watched more videos, just kind of curious about it. I played a lot of sports as a child, so I there's definitely like a certain amount of competitiveness that I like to be a part of. But I had randomly mentioned to one of my friends.
You played sports in India?
A lot of sports.
Really?
Yeah.
I know that sounds totally judgmental, but
no, it's totally
like, what kind of sports were you doing? Cricket?
So I just a brief background. The school that I had gone to for middle school and high school was a yogic school that was designed to teach children discipline.
Like a Montessori kind of a thing?
Kind of. I would say that it was like deeply rooted in Kundalini yoga. So it was a lot about the balance of mind, body, and spirit, and the mind being academics, the body being physical activity, the spirit being yoga and meditation.
Oh, wow.
So we had a rigorous, almost like military structured day where we were doing physical training in the morning, school in the afternoon, yoga and sports in the afternoon, and then like meditation. And then
Dude, that does not sound very hippie-like at all. No, really, it
yeah,
doesn't.
no, it was about like that balance, because there was a lot of meditation and service. We did what we'd call seva, where you do selfless service, and you'd go to what is called the Golden Temple, and you'd clean the floors at 2 a.m. Really? Yeah. So there was a lot of interesting things, but to get back to sports, we had to. No, it's totally fine. We had to play sports. Like that was like a structured time.
Like what kind of sports?
Basketball, soccer. One of the more interesting ones would be kabaddi. I actually played on the U.S. team for a while.
What is that?
So it's. I recommend anyone interested in it to Google it, because words don't quite explain it. But it's almost like it's like tag meets wrestling meets like, yeah, I'd say like meets like jiu-jitsu or something, because it's a lot of locks and holds. To give a little brief explanation, there's a circle and there's 2 teams. Yeah. Each team has raiders and defenders. The raiders go to the other team's side, and has to tag one of their team members and get back to their side. But once you've tagged a team member, they can then hold you from getting back to your side.
Dude, this sounds like a great game for coders.
It's such a good, I mean, it's so awesome. And I recommend, like, again, anyone Google
anyone that would go to a Renaissance festival would play this game.
It's awesome. It's also brutal. Actually, the last year that I played for the U.S. team, I actually fractured a rib.
Oh
so
my God.
I haven't, yeah. It was pretty brutal. We were also, we were playing the New Zealand team, and there were a bunch of like jacked like rugby players. I was like, oh jeez.
Oh yeah.
Got crushed.
Oh fuck. Again, doesn't sound very hippie-like. What's the name of it again?
The school's called Midi.
The sport.
The sport, kabaddi. Kabbadi. I believe that's the right
I am
spelling
absolutely going to Google that. That sounds like it's some fun shit right there.
Yeah.
Not that I'm ever going to do it, but I do want to see what it looks like. So I totally derailed.
I know, that's totally fine. So,
you were talking about
competitive
competition. So you did a lot of sports when you were growing up.
Yeah. So there's definitely a part of me that still wanted to be competitive. When you're not in school, like, who plays team sports? Right. It's not really a thing. I mean, unless you join a league. But
so you wanted to join the barista competition to be competitive.
Yeah. But
I'm not judging that anyway. I'm sure my face was like, really? No. And the reason I looked like that was because you don't strike me as a competitive person at all.
So that's something I was going to add to that, where anyone who saw me in New Orleans, I'm very lighthearted about my competitiveness. Okay. Like, I do it for fun, mainly just because it's like cool to win, but if you don't win, you learn something.
So you didn't go there to fuck shit up?
No,
you went there,
to learn, for sure.
Okay. But next year could be a whole different story.
Yeah.
Next year you're going to fuck some shit up.
I fucking hope so. Jeez. Man. But, okay, how it really started was I randomly said it to one of my friends, and they said it to someone else. And that person reached out to me and was like, do you want to compete? And I was like, yeah. Literally the day of registration. I didn't give it any thought until the day of registration.
Okay.
I sat in front of my computer and I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. So it was very on a whim. I think unlike some other competitors who are like completely like preparing all year for this.
Dude, I'm convinced some competitors like take whatever the equivalent of steroids is for coffee. They're like, this shit is really serious.
Yeah. So I think I hope that my way of doing it doesn't like discredit any hard work that anyone else has done, because again, it was very on a whim. I was like, I'm gonna see if this is a thing. I literally watched every year's videos and just kind of like got an idea for it. Going in, I was like, I tend to just kind of go with the flow. I was like, oh, I don't need a prepared speech. I'm just gonna go and I'll like say some. Well, I didn't do that, but at first I was like, oh, I can just like wing it, right? No. And I realized, like, as time got closer to the competition,
okay, this is intense.
Like every single day after work, I was training for hours.
Dude, I've coached someone before. I've never competed. It's just not my thing. I'm not competitive at all. But I've coached someone before, and it's intense. Yeah,
it's intense to the point where, like, so the whole wing thing, the first run through, I could not even say words. I was like, and like I'm, you know, every day I'm training people how to do make espresso. It's like I like couldn't even say what I was doing. It was ridiculous. But as I was kind of going through that process, I realized it kind of brought me back to my time in college studying photography and how you had to conceptualize a lot of your ideas. And so I started to put that onto it, and I like have completely fallen in love with competing because it's this way of constructing this like little piece of art almost.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I thought that was awesome to the point of like, you know, the napkins that you use and the cups that you use, and like
it's performance art.
It's a complete, and I did a lot of performance art in college.
Did you really?
Yeah. Oh God, that's another podcast.
Okay, that sounds rather ominous. We can talk about that later.
But I really fell in love with that and how you could like construct this piece of art that was coffee and that is coffee. And I thought it was really awesome that I could roast my own coffee. I think that gave me...
And did you roast the coffee for your competition? Great.
Yeah.
Good work.
And that was what got my highest scores this year. So I was super excited about that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was like getting like 5.5s out of 6s on the espresso. So
would you enter the roasters comp?
I would, and that's what a lot of people were asking. They're like, you could do all of them. And I was like, yeah, I would definitely consider it.
You could do brewers cup, tasters, and roasters, and barista.
Yeah. There's something about espresso and making espresso that I just, as a barista, love. And that's why I definitely was, I think some people, you know, they start with brewers cup just to like dip their feet in, see what it's like. I just like went full in. And
good for you.
I thought it was a really awesome opportunity to also talk about what's really important to me about coffee, and that being home and community. And that's what I found here in San Diego, that like sense of home and community. Backtrack a little bit, when I was living in India, I felt like I was like, it was home for the time being, but since going there, I haven't had like a physical home where like it's a house and a family and all that. So
how long did you live in India?
I lived there for 7 years.
From when you were a little kid?
Yeah, from 2005 to 2012. I was there. And so I was 10 when I moved there. And so I originally from Los Angeles.
Yeah. Are you? So you're raised in LA?
Yeah.
Sorry about
First
that.
10 years. Yeah, I know. You know, you're not the only one who says that. To be honest, I'm sorry about it too. Every time I go back, I'm like, what is this place?
Yeah, I lived there for a few years. And it's like, I kept wondering what was wrong with me because I couldn't fit in there. And I'm like, this is actually a good thing. But I didn't realize that until afterwards. I don't want to be here. No, this place is a shithole.
Yeah.
But that's just my personal experience. I'm not saying, like, please don't send me hate mail saying, why do you fucking hate Los Angeles? I'm allowed to have my own opinion on this. I've learnt recently that to share less opinions, and I will share less opinions, but I feel very strongly about that one.
That's honestly, like, I don't... It's funny because people are like, you don't really seem like you're from LA. And
no, you really don't.
I don't really feel strongly associated to LA.
But I'm sure India will do that to you.
Oh, yeah. That I feel much more, I feel like India's more home. Yeah. And yeah.
So you moved here back when you were 17 and you moved to New York. How did you get from New York to San Diego? Like, what made that decision? Oh, for God's sake.
So there's one reason that I feel like I don't know if you want me to talk about on here or not. I know. Well, okay, so my husband and I have an aunt out here who works in the medical marijuana industry. And she had opportunity for him to work in the industry as well, and I think we both just needed a break from New York. Like I was like going crazy.
I'm sure New York
between like full-time school and like multiple jobs and just like
and having a husband
and and like just feeling like it was just, I felt like it wasn't moving forward.
Yeah.
And so I had come here during the summers a few years and just was like, you know, San Diego sounds really fucking nice right now. Like some sun, some beach,
no snow,
and like no trekking to the subway and like dropping all your shit and then having someone accidentally kick you, and like it's just like that random cycle of like just falling.
This is too hard again and again and again.
And I love New York, but we kind of, honestly, I was telling someone yesterday, we moved here on a whim too. I'm just a whim kind of lady.
Yeah, clearly.
We moved here with like about a week's notice.
Well, I had about that much notice before I moved to the States.
Yeah, so we just got up, moved here, and everything just fell into place.
That's same. I absolutely can relate.
Like the second day we were here, we found a house. I had saved up a little bit, so I had a few weeks before I had to like find a job, but I knew I wanted to work in coffee and did a little research, looked into James, Bird Rock, a few other places, and actually randomly my grandmother found a Craigslist ad for coffee professional, and it was Lofty, and
wow.
I guess I nailed the interview, and I've been there for almost 3 years now.
Why do you think that I wouldn't have wanted to know that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if you want to talk about weed or anything.
There's one rule on this podcast. There are no rules.
Awesome.
We can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Cool.
Like, we're in California. Weed is a hot topic now.
Exactly. It's kind of a tragic topic too, but
especially in San Diego, because they're doing everything that they can to stop.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, the last I checked, because I don't know if you know this, but we've been working on adding CBD to Elixir.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah, so we've been working on that.
I think that'd be so amazing.
And I couldn't talk about it before now publicly because I didn't know if like what was happening with my visa and blah blah blah. But yeah, we're working on that.
That's incredible.
And it's going to be a lot of fun. Except what they're doing here in San Diego is that they are trying to make this a dry region of California.
Completely.
And so the last I checked, and look, it's going to change a million times
for sure.
as the legislation starts coming out. But now that it is legal to use it recreationally, they're issuing zero agricultural. Not only are they issuing zero agricultural licenses, they're taking them away.
Yeah.
And they are saying that all the marijuana stores have until that currently have licenses have until 2020 to recoup the expenses that they spent on opening these stores, because they're not issuing any more licenses.
Yeah. It's really.
Is your aunt getting hit by that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. She had to actually close down her shop, which I'm really
so sorry to hear that.
Like, she was one of the like pioneers in San Diego too, which is like pretty sad. She's currently actually working for a really awesome company called Vet CBD, and it's CBD for animals. And she has 2 dogs, and literally have saved one of their lives. So she's really big advocate.
I need to have a chat with your aunt about this, because we're trying to find the purest form of CBD that we can.
She might be able to help you.
Yeah. And we've found a couple of good enough, but we're trying to find it so that. Because typically what happens is that the purest forms come in flakes, and you add them to Elixir, and what happens is it turns Elixir cloudy, which it doesn't look that terrible, but if we can keep it as clear as it currently is, that would be great. And perhaps having the cloudiness of it would be fine, so that we could differentiate between the two. But we just want to explore every option out there.
Totally.
And we don't want to jump on this before we're ready.
Definitely put out a high quality product, because that's unfortunate, is like, because of all of these laws, so much pretty terrible products are out there now.
And like, the technology that's coming out now is pretty premature compared to what's going to be out in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So until we find something that meets the standard of what people have come to expect from our brand, we're just not going to bother with it.
Yeah.
But we're going to continue to test it. We tried oils and stuff like that, but they just sit on top of the product, and that ruins the experience. We also want something that's not going to overpower the aroma of what elixir is, because that's such a big part of it.
Absolutely.
It's weird. My accountant was at like a workshop or seminar or whatever you call it for people in California who were taking care of businesses that were working in this space of marijuana or cannabis. And apparently there's legislation that has said it is illegal to have in California. It will be illegal to have coffee and cannabis.
Yeah, I read that, and like everyone out there having those cafe cannabis ideas, you're like, dang it.
So it's at this stage, it's still illegal.
Yeah.
At this stage. But there hasn't been a clarification as to whether that means that CBD is still legal, or whether, like, are they legislating against THC, or are they legislating against CBD and THC and everything in between?
Yeah.
So until that's become a little more clear, I don't want to be in a situation where they're like, sorry, you're here on a work visa, and that company that you've got, you're fucking some shit up with that. Get out.
Yeah.
No, it's not worth it. And I want to make sure that we are putting out a quality product that we don't have to pull from people. You know, the worst thing is we put this beautiful coffee product out there that's got CBD in it. People love it, and then all of a sudden it's like,
you can't have it because
you can't have it.
That would be so sad.
Yeah, and unprofessional.
Yeah.
So weed brought you out here.
It really did, actually. Oh man. But also just looking for like a change of pace, and I found that. And
well, that's a big change of pace. It's the polar opposite, going from New York to San Diego. Literally.
And so I just I just love it here. I really do. And I feel like I've met some really incredible people specifically working in coffee, and I'm just like really energized and excited for what's next. And I really hope that I can have some influence on that. Like,
I feel that you will.
And yeah, I just want to be a part of it, and want to be not only in San Diego though, because this is something I also believe in, but it's like, we all know, we work in it. It's really a global community, and my goal is to like somehow connect it all for myself and for others.
So are you looking at perhaps being a barista, roaster, trainer, whatever it is you decide to go into? Are you looking to take that outside of San Diego, or are you looking at taking your networking outside of San Diego?
More networking, probably.
So this is where your coffee base is going to be.
This is where and like you said, like the potential of what our community here could be
huge
is so big, and I feel like it's just like on the verge of just like blowing up. So especially
like I live in Golden Hill, as you know, and if people want to figure it out, you'll understand why I'm saying this in a second, but it's so close to the downtown vicinity, and downtown is slowly creeping up the hill, where the pricing now for Golden Hill is downtown pricing.
Yeah.
And we're like less than a quarter of a mile from downtown. And so now what's happening is that more and more coffee companies are coming, specialty coffee companies are coming from around the country and opening up specifically in downtown. And so as they're pushing up the hill, as it's coming from there, as they're pushing up the hill, there's going to be more opportunities for the bigger coffee companies from other parts of the US and Australia.
Heck yeah.
Oh yeah. There are a couple of friends of mine who have been starting to whisper the whole, what's happening, is it worth coming to the US? So myself and one very special guest from the US, who I can't name yet, and my attorney and probably one of my mentors in Australia are going to hold Mapa Forward workshop in Sydney and Melbourne later this year.
That's
called
awesome.
Coming to America.
Nice.
For the coffee industry. And if you haven't seen the movie, go see it. It's fucking great. Have you seen Coming to America with Eddie Murphy?
No.
Oh, it's brilliant.
I love Eddie Murphy though. I'll have to check it out.
He was in his prime. But we are going to do the workshop called Coming to America and it will be for baristas, roasters, and business owners who are interested in coming to America and being a part of this explosive coffee industry that we're experiencing here. And particularly San Diego is erupting in such a big way. But because we're in San Diego, we seem to think it's the next coffee town.
Totally.
But I hear the same things happening in so many different cities around the country. And the reason I know that is because people are contacting me saying, so, like, this is through Mapa Forward, so we've got this amazing coffee scene starting to bubble up here. Yeah, and it's like, this is really great.
That is really great. It's a good... Remember what we were talking about earlier of like converting more people to specialty coffee is like,
so hopefully there will be coffee festivals happening.
Yes.
So when we were in the cafe and we happened to start a conversation, that I was like, shut up, stop talking, come and talk to me about this on camera because of all this stuff. We were talking about a lot of interesting things that are very topical for, I think, a lot of people in coffee. Specifically, we were talking about things like the intimidation factor that women feel in coffee, the frustration that women feel in coffee, and the frustration that men feel in coffee in not knowing how to sorry.
No, you're good.
I was just looking to see. No, we're good. It's live. The frustration that a lot of men mentioned to me about, I don't know how to navigate this. I don't know how to...
Men?
Yeah.
Like what?
What they're unable to navigate a lot of the time is, how do I get the women that work for me to stay? Which, when I started to hear that, I was like, wait, what? There are a lot more women in coffee in America than there are in Australia. Excuse me.
Would you say, I mean, I don't know the statistics on this, but would you say
I don't think anybody
dominating?
does. I don't think anybody knows this statistics. And what we're going to do is we're going to start a section on our website with surveys.
Nice.
And so we're in the development phase of that so that we can start to get a better understanding of what those numbers actually are. But there are a lot more women in coffee here, and yet I notice the same concerns coming from women here, regardless of the fact that
we might be a dominant.
Well, I don't know that we're dominant yet, but I know that we're definitely more equal than we are in Australia, just in a numbers perspective. But there still seems to be that intimidation factor that exists. I know that there are male employers who are frustrated that they can't keep women in their workplace because of one or two of the males that work with them that keep being the main reason that the women leave. But they want to keep those men there for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So you and I were talking about a whole bunch of this.
This is such a complicated topic, I feel like. And I feel like it's hard to talk about sometimes because, you know, maybe we don't have specific numbers or statistics. But what I can speak on is how I feel and my experiences that I've heard from other women. And
not just where you're at now. Like, this is a conversation we're having about your entire career. So I don't want anyone thinking that anything that you're about to say is just specific to the job that you're having right now.
Not at all. And something I do have to say that I feel extremely fortunate for where I'm at, and not to to use a term you've used in your previous blow smoke up my own ass, but I feel that maybe because of my life experiences, I have a work ethic that is maybe above average than what some people might think, as well as just like
oops. Sorry.
No worries. I think maybe for my life experiences, I hold myself and I'm confident in myself in a way that I maybe haven't had to deal with some things that other women have.
That's fair.
Yeah, and not only in coffee, but just in life, like a lot of the really terrible things that happen to women, I'm fortunate a lot of them haven't actually happened to me. I mean, we all have experienced sexism for sure.
I don't know a single woman that hasn't.
Yeah, so I definitely have, but you know, there's people who may be being sexually assaulted in the workplace. That hasn't happened to me, thankfully.
No, and I'm lucky that it hasn't happened to me. I've been physically abused in the workplace, but not sexually assaulted.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of it is really subtle and is really systemic and is really hard to get other people to understand.
So give us some examples.
This is going to be kind of broad, but something that has happened to me time and time again, where maybe we have an importer or somebody involved with our production come in, and I'm
outside of the business.
Yeah,
because this would never be accepted where you are.
Yeah, and let's say I'm in the roastery doing whatever I need to be doing for the workday. Countless times, more than I could probably count my hands, do I not even get acknowledged, but oftentimes get overlooked. And then you're like, oh, and this is our other roaster. And then they're like, oh. And it's like this whole like realization where, you know,
They make a beeline for the man.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And so it's these really subtle things where I really try not to let it bother me. But then I'm like, why do I have to like be someone of importance to be acknowledged?
Is that what you're trying to say? Or are you saying, why do I have to be a man in order to be noticed?
Yeah, more of that. But it seems like, you know, the man is seen as more important, where, you know, I'm not even acknowledged or looked at. Right. And like, then I'm not going to call anyone out, but then later down the line, sometimes I'll meet these people again, and they don't even remember meeting me, and I'll be like,
wow.
Yeah. And so like I'm like, oh, we actually had a conversation, and so it's just, and I try to. It sounds
frustrating.
Yeah, it's fucking frustrating.
Yeah.
And I really believe that my hard work will pay off. It really will. I really do.
Absolutely will. I want you to know that.
Yeah.
And I want you to know that nothing that you're experiencing is abnormal. And it's not about you. It's about exactly what you're saying. This is a really complex problem.
Yeah.
This is, and anybody who's trying to say, well, it just has to stop, good luck with that, because it's not just going to stop. But
let's talk about it.
Yeah,
and to be honest, I haven't really been able to talk about this because a lot of my friends, as much as I love them, are guys. And when I say it, they're just like, maybe you're overlooking it, or like, But I like just want to talk about it because it's hard to talk about, and that's just one little example. But
well, then let's talk about it, because it's absolutely something that has followed me my whole career, and it was doing my head in, because I couldn't talk about it. The only people I could talk about it with was other men, because I was pretty much always the only woman in the workplace. And I thought I was going out of my mind. That's kind of how I feel, because it's kind of like, oh, well, you're just overthinking it. You're just crazy. Yeah, and I'm like, but am I really? And even when I never really felt these things to the degree I felt them in the coffee world when I was in the corporate world. And when I was, also because the person who was my boss for most of the time I was in the corporate world was the commander of the Navy. Okay. He had just left and he happened to land in corporate and was my boss. And I was really fortunate in that sense. So he just wouldn't tolerate it. He was just the biggest badass ever. Yeah. And he was like, you're all here to work. And so your physical strength means nothing here. All I care about is your minds and your personality. So let's get to work.
I love that. And that's where, like, I think, backtrack to my past, where I kind of grew up like that, where, like, yes, there are physical differences between men and women, but like you're just because you're a woman doesn't mean you can't do the 50 push-ups right now. like, and so that being work, I mean, and like translating, like, I can work just as hard as anyone else. And and I will work harder than anyone else.
Will. And I feel like and this is where I say, when I was saying earlier, the coffee industry has kicked the shit out of me, but I'm really grateful for that now. It's because all of these experiences helped me see that I will work harder than anybody else. I hated that I had to in order to prove myself. I hated that I had to work doubly hard just to have the same kind of consideration. Yeah. I didn't need the recognition. I just wanted the same consideration as what other people got because they were men and they didn't have to think twice about it. But it did teach me these so many other lessons that I learnt that they never got the fortune to actually get to learn because they weren't put in those situations. Yeah. And as a business owner now, I'm extremely grateful for it because I carry the whole fucking city on my back and do all the work that's necessary now. And I have proven to myself that I can.
And I think that's ultimately, and this is how I keep my mindset, is that I'm proving this to myself. Like,
exactly.
If I can't prove it to you, I'm proving it to myself, and I'm going to be happy with that. And I'm going to continuously prove that to myself, and I don't need you to tell me that I'm doing a good job because I know I am.
And I wish that I wish I was as fortuitous as what your perspective is right now, is to know that I was doing a good job, because unfortunately I was faced with a lot of employers who were not insightful enough to let me know that I was doing a good job.
That's hard.
It's really hard. And it was a different time. You know, our industry wasn't at the place that it is now. Our society wasn't at the place that it is now. I'm a Gen Xer. And so for us, and I was working for baby boomers most of the time. And so from their perspective, it was a lot of, well, just work harder, just work harder, just work harder. And now we have this approach to, as employers, of positive reinforcement and how can I motivate my staff and how can I keep them interested and engaged and be considerate and all this kind of stuff. That wasn't around as I was coming up, and unfortunately that, coupled with self-doubt and the confusion of why is it so much harder for me? It was really fucking with my head. Like, why does he get much more recognized from people doing the same thing that I'm doing? Like, why is it so much more important? Because he, whoever the he is a he. And that really messed with my head, and it shouldn't, given I was raised in the Arab community. Right? It really shouldn't. But it was somehow, in my mind, I had compartmentalized that into, well, it's okay that it happened at home and in my private life because that's the Arab community and that's the way that goes. And then to see that then be in the not Arab world, in the coffee world, where I thought,
that's
wow,
so accepting and like inclusive.
Like in the real world, where all the Australians are, because, you know, amongst the Arabs, I get it, they're migrants, they have this mentality, and it's going to be a couple of generations before it goes. And then I get into the not Arab world, and I'm amongst all these not Arabs, and they're all still sexist assholes. And I'm like very confused. I would go home and my husband, God love him, he would say to me, "Did you have fun at work today?" And I'd be like, "I love my job, but I don't understand why I feel like I'm weird there." He's like, "What do you mean you feel weird?" I'm like, "I don't know, the guys are treated like rock stars and we're treated like the help or like the people who are there to support the rock stars, even though I'm a head barista."
Yeah.
But the guys who are like under me are like treated as some sort of fucking, oh dude, it was really, really confusing to me. And it still is. Like as a businesswoman, when people say to me, if only Elixir was run by a man, the business would just be so accepted by the coffee industry. And I'm like, fuck man, like,
yeah. Why? And oh man, I'm kind of at a loss for words almost, because like I said, this is just like, I think that ultimately we just need to talk and have more conversations, and not only between women but between all of us, and you know, not to like pigeonhole them, but to call people out when they do this, like this whole roastery not being noticed thing. One of those people actually ended up to be one of my friends, and I totally called him out for it. I was like, you know, we met like 2 times before you even like actually knew we met. And I think that, you know, we don't have to, it doesn't have to be a one side versus the other, but it's like just acknowledging it and then saying something.
And I'll be really frank with you, like I have this conversation. I used to want to school men on it. They were in my younger and dumber days when I thought you could school people on these kinds of things. And I've really changed. The last couple of years have been an interesting time for humanity. Yeah. And the way that we consume information and the way that just everyone's roles are evolving so quickly, whether it be as a, you know, a gender identity or the workplace environment or our political views, all of these kinds of things. The way that we're allowed and required to communicate our stance on that thing has been extremely challenging for everybody. Yeah. I'm no exception to that. I've been fascinated by it, and I think that we're in such an interesting time where we are looking at the way that people are exchanging their ideas, and there are some people that are trying to bark at you and enforce their ideologies onto you. And then there are other people who have completely tuned out and don't give a fuck. And then there's the middle ground of people. And I like to think of myself being this kind of person, in that I don't need you to come on board with what my ideologies are. If anything, I try to have no ideology so I can keep evolving what my perspectives are. And what I want to do is, instead of telling you my perspective, I want to sit here and ask you about your perspective and engage you in conversation about a lot of what you're experiencing with regards to the workplace environment, particularly with men. And my experience with that has uncovered some deeply surprising shit to me. The most surprising of all of it is that many men are unaware that there's a problem.
I think that's where it starts.
They're very surprised that women feel this way. Having said that though, when you then challenge that notion with, but are you really? Like, are you sure that you're surprised about this? You don't realize that women are treated different to the way that you're treated, and that's when more of their truths start to come to their consciousness. It's not that they are deliberately lying or anything like that. It's that this sexism, this racism, this misogyny, whatever it is, all of the isms that happen there are so buried in the culture
completely
that they're not at the forefront of what somebody is trying to achieve in their day. And they don't need to be, right? Until there's a problem. And when there is a problem, which I think tends to start stemming when people start to feel frustration. Anytime there's anyone in the workplace feeling frustration, that's because there's a lack of communication going on. So if people can start to communicate their frustrations without trying to bark at somebody and say, I need you to agree with me.
Yeah.
I need you to hear me. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. Rather than, I need you to do this. How about we just say, I love to have a conversation. I'm feeling frustrated about something. And this is what it is.
It seems much more productive.
It really does.
Much more productive. And that's interesting that you say that, because I feel like for me currently, actually, not to get too much into it, but some of that, maybe that lack of communication has kind of been happening for me in my workplace right now too. And that's what we're doing. We're kind of like, okay, let's talk about this. Let's communicate better, over communicate. That's something we're always like, especially like working as a team, like don't even worry about being annoying. Just like just talk it out.
Over communicate that shit until everyone gets it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things of when I have through the consulting that I'm doing, when I'm talking to new employers who are opening a new shop or whatever, when I start having conversations with them about what's your communication strategy with your team, how are you making it and I don't like this term safe space, but that's what I mean. I don't mean a safe space in the perspective of this is where snowflakes go to rock in the fetal position because somebody used a slightly weird term that they don't want to identify with. That's not the safe space that I'm talking about. And yes, motherfuckers, come at me. Happy to have this conversation with anyone who wants to talk to me about this shit. Because I think that we're becoming unreasonable as a society in what we are letting people talk about and what we're just, no, you can't talk about it. Sorry, I don't mean to do that.
No.
But you know, these people who are like, the second you want to start talking about something, they want to put up a barrier and what you're saying offends my sensibilities, so stop talking. It's like, well, listen, that's not going to achieve anything.
I completely agree.
You know, it's about how do employers, because it starts with the employer, how do they create a safe space for people to communicate openly? Not aggressively, not vigorously, but openly. And open communication is about hearing openly as much as it is about talking openly and observing openly. And when I have these conversations with the clients that I've got, what we're noticing is that not only do they want to create a safe space, but every single one of their employees wants to create a safe space. And anyone who doesn't immediately sticks out like a sore thumb and eventually leaves the team. Communication and having this idea of, well, we're here to work together and we're here to look after each other. Well, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
And this is, I don't know why it's taken so long for people to start giving a fuck about this, but I happen to be in the fortunate situation where Mapa Forward seems to be bringing very like-minded people together. And so what I'm observing is so many men coming up to me and saying, how do I start this conversation in my workplace? Because my women are my best workers. And I'm losing so many of these women because they just don't want to have to put up with the bullshit of the men. I'm like, well, sack the men. Is that a plausible solution? And they're like, well, no, because they're good workers too, but the women are better and they don't want to have to put up with the bullshit. There's no one fix. Like, you can't just say, let's just have all women or let's just have all men. It's not going to fix it. The women are feeling frustrated because of generations and generations and generations of messaging that men are more important. And the men are frustrated because they don't see what they're doing wrong. They're actually just falling into line. And they're falling into line to the messaging that they've been given from the people that raised them. So having these conversations needs to be an actual conversation, not a, you're an asshole, stop treating me like I'm less than you. That's not actually communicating anything functional at all. The other big thing that I learned from having these conversations with men about the workplace is something that blew my mind. I was unaware of the signaling, the non-verbal signaling that goes on between men in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't aware that when men meet each other, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on to establish who the alpha is between them.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm fascinated with human behavior, so I was really disappointed in myself that I didn't know this,
Mm-hmm.
but it's deep. Like, this shit is super deep, the way that these men communicate this stuff.
Yeah.
It's the tone of their voice, it's the body language, it's the way that they try and one-up each other. It's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on, which is a complete separate conversation that's going on when two men are working together, that I believe could be something that could be perceived by women to be them trying to push us away.
Mm-hmm.
And show us that we are not as important. That is a byproduct of what's going on, but it is not the center of what's going on in a male-dominated place.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it okay. It's non-inclusive, but this is just now for the last couple of years that I've been having this conversation, and the Me Too movement has had a lot to do with this.
For sure.
Because it's just blown my mind how so many men are surprised by this whole fucking Me Too thing. I'm like, are you kidding me? I promise you, you do not know a single woman that hasn't been affected by this.
Yeah.
There is not a single woman alive that hasn't been subjected to sexual harassment. Sexual abuse, I get it. That's not every woman. It's still a lot. It's still the majority of women, but it's not all women.
Yeah.
So what I think is happening here is an evolution in our industry that's only going to get, I don't want to use the word better, but exposed.
Mm-hmm.
The more we have constructive conversations around it and the more we unpack it. Because what I'm seeing is that this real disconnect between men who are older that are set in their ways and don't understand the problem, and men that are younger who know that a problem exists but don't know what they're doing that's contributing to that.
Yeah.
And if we don't find a way to make it a safe conversation
Mm-hmm.
for everyone to have, nobody's going to win out of this.
Yeah.
And we need this to be a win-win-win-win-win-win-win for everybody that's involved. It's the only way we drive our industry forward.
Totally.
The last thing we want is to end up like the restaurant industry, where that's just a fucking mess. And I don't think that we're in danger of ending up like that. If the Me Too movement didn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
and the conversations that are happening now didn't happen, we could have gone that way.
Yeah.
We won't now, but it requires people to be open to the myriad of conversations that are happening from a whole bunch of different people.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about women, we're talking about trans folks, we're talking about people who have no gender identity or have chosen not to have a gender identity. We're talking about people who, people of colour, any kind of minority
Yeah.
needs to own their shit. And again, please come at me if you think that you want to have this conversation, because I've got a lot to say on it, but sending me hate mail isn't going to achieve anything.
Well, let's keep having a conversation.
Right. So as long as the hate mail isn't fuck you, Lee, like that's not constructive. Tell me what your problems are and let's talk about it. But what I'm saying is own your shit. Like, as a woman in coffee, the thing that kept doing my head in was, what am I bringing to this situation that's perpetuating
Totally.
this drama or this dysfunction? Took me a long time to realize that, oh, there's something else going on here. But I was always making sure to use an AA reference that friends keep bringing up to me, and it's fantastic, but making sure that my side of the street is clean.
Yeah.
And so I would always keep checked in to make sure that I wasn't bringing a level of anything that was creating a problem. And I was. A lot of the time what I found, I was developing these coping mechanisms that were like, well, fuck these guys. If I can't beat them, I have to join them. So I would raise my aggression level just to be able to compete in that workplace. Yeah. And that damaged me for a long time. It got to the point where when I was training people after that, like many a man cried at a coffee machine with me. Yeah. And I look back at that and I think, I didn't have to be like that. But I did have to be like that because if I was softer, they weren't taking me seriously. But the aggression that I brought with driving them to tears, that was dysfunctional as well. Yeah. And so now, like looking, what am I bringing to this situation is where I really turned. Yeah. And I was like, this isn't healthy. This really isn't healthy for me at all. And I changed my ways, and I'm grateful that I could. But the reason I could change my ways is because I had people around me that were like, that were ready to have conversations. And I realized that when they weren't prepared to have conversations with me, I was in the wrong workplace.
All right, that makes sense.
That was a really difficult lesson to learn. Like, I love working here. I love my customers. This brand has a really great name. I'm getting a lot of attention from this. Again, ego, right? Like, what is the currency that's operating here? And it wasn't a great currency. It was ego. So when I realized I had to let go of all of that shit and find a healthy place for me to work, that's when shit started to turn.
So I have a question for you on this topic of like keeping your side of the street clean. And so something like, as we're talking about this, I'm realizing maybe in some of my own work ethics and like, again, coming from like an Eastern, like pretty much raised in an Eastern lifestyle where, you know, women, you didn't show your shoulders or your ankles, you were modestly dressed, and there was a certain way that you had to hold yourself to not be
sexualized.
Yeah, exactly. And so that is something that I learned at a very young age. And I think back to what I was saying, where I'm fortunate that I haven't actually had to deal with what I think a lot of women do. What do you think some of those things that us as women can do to keep our side of the street clean, as you said?
It's a really great question, because I spend a lot of time just observing a lot of what's going on in cafes. And I think that it goes back to employers helping people this is probably the first couple of years of their work life, and they don't have any level of professionalism to mark anything by. Employers can help everybody, no matter what their gender is, make some decisions that make it easy for them to understand how to keep their side of the street clean. And I use this example a lot when I'm talking to people. There should be no side boob at a coffee machine. There really shouldn't.
I mean, Toby's estate, it was like armpits. Like, you
covered.
could not, nothing.
But I see side boob at coffee machines. And I think in that, and the reason I use this example is because with a lot of my clients, I talk about what is the conversation that the business is having with the customer. And a lot of that conversation is non-verbal, right? So if I walk into a cafe, what is the non-verbal conversation the customer's eyes are having with the business? You know, are they seeing dirty tables? Are they seeing dirty walls? Are they seeing pristine walls? Are they seeing
side boob?
Side boob, right?
Yeah.
So the non-verbal conversation that's happening there is a really interesting one when somebody walks into a cafe and sees side boob, or they see a man who's been lifting weights for however many years and he's got a tank top on. You call it tank top here, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So he's exposing his pecs. It's the same thing as side boob. And the messaging that's coming from that is, this place is all about how people look and what they can offer you that's other than the coffee.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's not the right conversation that a professional establishment has.
And I think professional, and almost to like, I think a lot of us in this industry we call ourselves coffee professionals.
Oh yeah.
And I think that that's actually
far too many people.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting note where, you know, I did performance art, and I think that there's a time and place for people to express themselves through fashion and through what they do and don't want to share, that being their body. And I definitely partake in that, let's say, but maybe not in your cafe, where if you're calling yourself a coffee professional, that's a place to be professional, with your team as well as your
customers.
Yeah.
And so why I make that comment, and I use that as an example, is because I would really like owners. You're really enjoying those, aren't you?
I think I've eaten like 4 of them.
I'm glad. Siri's eating some coconut and peanut.
Anyone who knows me knows I love food.
Hey,
I will never stop
you're in the
eating.
right place, let me tell you. But going back to what I was saying, is the reason I used that example is because that's a way that employers can help their employees manage their side of the street by setting a dress code. A really simple dress code that simply states, for food safety and their own personal safety reasons, in Australia, you're not allowed to show your armpits, right? You have to wear covered, your feet have to be covered. So wherever I was the head barista, I always made the rule that at least short sleeve t-shirts, not too much cleavage showing, like I don't want any boob action exposed, and I don't want shorts that are up your ass. Because the conversation is no longer about you as a professional, it's about your personal fashion.
Yeah.
And there are other things that you can do to be fashionable than to sexualize yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with whatever you want to wear outside. I'm going to be the first person that tells you how amazing you look if you've got your shorts up your ass. If you're a guy, a girl, whatever it is, or what amazing dress or shirt or whatever it is that you're wearing, I'm the first one that's going to compliment you on that. But is it appropriate at work is the question that you need to ask if you're looking at being a professional. Yep. There's a reason that people in the corporate world have different attire than what they do when they're going out on a Saturday.
Yeah.
They don't wear the same clothes that they wear to work as they do when they're going out for brunch on Saturday.
Totally.
And so I'm not trying to say, you know, women are inviting harassment by showing side boob. That's not what I'm saying at all. I will fuck somebody up that even thinks that it's okay to approach a woman in any way, shape or form
because of that.
Because of that. Or because of any reason. But what I'm saying is, by putting boundaries in place, you are teaching people how to treat you.
Yeah.
And I think that we don't have enough of that going on in our industry. I think the tipping culture here in America really contributes to the fact that you go to a restaurant and you see a lot of waitresses wearing really tight clothes and really short skirts. They're going at it for the tips, and I think that that's undignified. I go into cafes now and I see people at the front of the like on the POS, and their t-shirts are tied into a little knot so you can see their stomach. They've got great stomachs and they've got amazing asses, and they've got their shorts, really short shorts, and I'm like, you look fantastic, but you look inappropriate for somebody who's about to make me a coffee. And I think that is one way that as employers we can help our staff get on a more even keel, is by saying there's a dress code and this is what it is. Whether it be an actual uniform or it be
guidelines,
whatever it is that you want to do, help your staff get there, particularly if they're all very young, because they haven't been given these, set these examples from other workplaces. And your job as the ship steerer of the business that you have is to make sure that the ship is heading in a direction with a healthy crew.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a healthy crew, what's going to happen is that the person who's supposed to be like putting up the sail can't do their job properly, because what they're thinking about is the fact that they were raped by one of their co-workers, or that there's a customer that keeps following them home.
Yeah.
And I've had that situation. I had a customer that kept following me home, but they were following me home because of they were stalking me from my music industry, and it happened to come and find me at the cafe and just kept following me home. It's a terrible situation to be in, because people who stalk you, they're great at it. Nobody else notices except for you. You don't want your staff to get into those situations. I mentioned this on the podcast once before, but just lick your fingers.
Okay, thank you.
It's fine. You're fine. I'm sorry I don't have any tissues for you.
That's totally fine.
I was mentioning this before on the podcast, but Steady State, we've just gone through the process with them of setting up their policies with regards to this kind of thing. And the staff really took it on board so fantastically when we were talking about what the sexual harassment policy is.
Do you mind sharing it?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. What happened with them, Elliot had said to me, I want to make sure that from before we open, everyone knows what's what. And he was great about it. And he said, we don't tolerate any kind of discomfort. None. Like, if not from customers and not from co-workers.
Yeah.
We went into what the sexual harassment policy would be. We started talking about some guidelines. From that, and I had mentioned the concept of a safe word, like the team needs to come up with a safe word. From that, the team went away separate from the owners, and they came up with a strategy how they can look after each other when it comes to sexual harassment.
That's awesome.
It's fantastic. And they did it in such a great way. So what they decided was that their safe words were going to be, I believe, grape juice and pineapple juice.
Nice. Grape
juice was if they were feeling discomfort from a co-worker, and pineapple juice was if they were feeling discomfort from a guest. And the way that they would execute that strategy was, if they were talking to a guest and the guest was making them feel uncomfortable, what they would say is, oh, hey, I'm just going to go out the back. I have some pineapple juice that I was working on. I've just remembered I haven't finished it. Could you take over for me, please?
Done. Fixed.
The person
not really fixed, but removed from the situation.
Removed from the situation. It signals the staff that something not okay is going on in that interaction. And typically the manager or the most senior person will be the person that takes over.
Yeah.
They will find a way to figure out what's going on there, and then everyone else on the shift knows that employee is going to disappear off the floor, and they can balance that out and cover for that person while they've gone. And it's just a really great communication strategy.
Totally.
That is, everyone feels safe, but everyone also knows how to go into action.
Yeah.
Again, this is a way that an employer can help people keep their side of the street clean.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. No, and I think with the dress code thing too, where I think right now we've had a few people kind of struggle with the dress code, where they're like, I just want to wear whatever I want, because we have a dress code at Lofty. And I think the way that we're talking about it right now, for me as like a trainer and someone who has to, implement some of these things, it's a nice way of going about it, where like, this is for you as much as it is for the image of the company. Like,
and for the customers. Like, we want the customers to focus on their experience here, not about their experience with your side boob here.
Yeah.
You know, I remember I worked at this place. It was called Taste. Fantastic bagels. Not bagels, baguettes. And like the owner was obsessed with quality. It was fantastic. So much so that he went to Paris to buy a sourdough starter that was 120 years old and paid $1,000 for every year that the sourdough starter had been alive. Like this guy was fucking fantastic. Shout out to Hugh. But there was this bizarre thing that was happening where customers were commenting on, and the first time a customer said it, I thought it was strange, and then so many customers were saying it. It never occurred to me that this was the case. But they would say, you know, we were talking at the office the other day and we realized what the hiring strategy is of Taste. And I'm like, we hire on professionalism. And they're like, no, you don't. Like, it's all about the looks. And I'm like, no, it's not. And then more people kept saying that. And I started to look around at the team and I'm like, oh, fuck. It was absolutely not intentional because they were hiring travelers.
Oh, wow.
As to, like, all they were doing was selling baguettes. And I just like, what do you mean they're hiring on looks? But they were right. Like everybody that worked at Taste could be a model.
Wow.
And that was the experience that customers were having. We didn't know that.
Okay. Do you think even the people hiring didn't realize this? Interesting.
No, because I spoke to him about it. And I would say, hey, Richard, like, this is what customers keep saying to me. And he's like, well, yeah, everyone here's beautiful, but that's not what we hire on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really?
Why?
You think everyone here's beautiful? And he's like, well, yeah, you are. All of you are. And I'm like, I've never noticed. But
it's those cues.
Exactly. So for us, we were all about, well, who's going to be the best worker? Who's going to be able to, like, they were doing 500 baguette sandwiches in a lunch.
Wow.
Just to go, right? So for us, we were looking at like, who's going to move the line? It's always about that kind of thing. The customers were all about, we wonder who they're going to hire and what they're going to look like next. What the fuck is that about?
That's wild.
It really is. But the reason I say something like that is because you want to make sure that the conversation that the customer is having is about your product
and not necessarily
about the looks.
Yeah.
Unless you want it to be about the looks. And if that's what, and look, there are plenty of businesses who we used to, like, I'll say it, a lot of people would hire, like, let's get a good looking person in here on the espresso machine. Yeah. Because let me tell you, that milkshake brings all the girls to the yard. Because it really did. Like, you would, and any Australian male barista will tell you that they really enjoyed being baristas. Read into that as much as you want. But male baristas in Sydney get a lot of attention. The women don't. I had one female barista say to me, God damn it, how come the men get laid and the women don't?
Oh man.
But that's the fact of it. Like, you would, if you were a good looking man behind a coffee machine, you got a lot of action. If you want a lot of action.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a part of the hiring strategy for lots of people, but it never tend to work out.
Yeah. I think hiring people who are qualified and who will buy into what you're doing and really take it on and make it their own are ultimately going to probably be the team that...
Right, but I don't want people to think that looks don't play a part, because they absolutely do.
Oh, for sure.
It's performance art. So turning up looking like a shithole, that's not going to work either.
Yeah.
It absolutely is performance art. And if you are doing your job well, people want to keep coming back to watch the performance. Completely. And you should be treating it like it's a show. Like anyone who thinks that what we do is just like, I'm just here to make coffee and be a mad scientist, well then make a fucking show out of it.
Yeah, that's my goal when I'm on bar. That's like, maybe that's that artist side of me who has done performance art, but to me it's like every movement is this like dance, and at least at the cafe in Little Italy, you're really on display there. And I think that was the point a little bit, to do that. And I think that you're catching on to something that I strongly believe in, is just balance of like professionalism and care and attention to detail and looks. Like, yeah, you want to look really nice when you come into this beautiful cafe. Absolutely. Don't be that one person who looks like they just rolled out of bed.
Look, there's guys who are standing there itching their balls while they're making an espresso. Like, it's funky. It looks terrible. It's unhygienic.
Yeah.
When you look clean, I'm not saying you have to be a stunning, picturesque kind of, porcelain-laden woman. That's not what I'm talking about. Or man, or like, you don't need pecs and big muscles, and that's not what I'm talking about. You don't even have to have one single tattoo. Into every barista that I've ever seen into our industry in the last 5 years. But what I'm
not me.
Yeah, hey, Miss Siri. Really, none?
None.
Wow, I used to get called after I got my neck tattoos. And I was wearing red lipstick all the time. People would refer to me as like, have you met that barista with the tattoos and the red lipstick? I'm like,
it became your persona.
So much more than that. The lady with the tattoos, the red lipstick. It worked.
Something that you actually brought up in, I think it was the first Map It Forward.
You came to the very first one.
And something that you had talked about was, man, it's slipping my mind now. Wow, what? It was so relevant. Hold on.
About tattoos?
Yeah. The show. People come, you were talking about people coming to the espresso bar, and you never know who's going to be on your bar. And that's something that, like, I really try to, I just want to be myself. And I see it this place where I can just be myself and meet people. And I just think that if we're all open to do what we need to do to get the job done, have fun while you're doing it, keep that open line of communication with your staff and your guests, and you're just gonna have a fun time at work. Like, and work doesn't have to feel like work, and that's how it is for me. Like, I feel like I'm playing when I'm at work,
and it should. Like, so my very first job was at a place called Mr. Espresso, and we had so much fun there. We worked our asses off, but it was a tiny little hole in the wall kind of cafe around the corner from Sony BMG. It was called Mr. Espresso. It's no longer called Mr. Espresso, but Marco and I were there, and it was my very first job out of corporate. So anything that said caution hot surface, my hand would just touch.
Great.
And he would be like, yeah, here, Lee, this says caution hot surface. Go ahead, fucking burn yourself again. And I was messy as anything, and because I didn't know. Like, I literally did not know that I was meant to bus tables. Like, that's how green I was.
Yeah.
But the banter that would happen between Marco and I, the energy that would be sparked by everybody. All the co-workers loved it. The customers vibed on it so much so that they wanted to offer us, they did offer us our own show on a reality show. What? Yeah.
A cafe reality show?
It was purely about...
Wait, did you guys do it?
No, fuck no.
Oh, okay.
No. We couldn't believe that they were offering this to us, but the reason I say that was we would have a crowd every morning because everyone would come to see how Marco and Lee were shit-talking each other.
Oh, great.
Like, it was an absolute performance that would happen every single morning. And we closed Saturday and Sunday, and people were excited about Monday.
They were like,
and they would
let's
tell
see
us.
it.
They would be like, guys, like I look forward to Monday coming just so I can come back to the Marco and Lee show. It was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. The joy that brings to everybody that's involved is ridiculous. Like,
it is.
That's when you realize I can create an average coffee, which was not my goal, but I realized at that point I can create just a good coffee. It doesn't have to be an excellent coffee. And the joy that we're bringing through the show that is the Marco and Lee show is exactly what's making these people want to come back every single day and love their coffee, no matter what. Like, people were leaving there with double vanilla lattes, like orgasming off the experience that they've had, because they're like, I'm happy, I'm laughing, I've got a hangover from the night before, but I don't feel it anymore. And
I think that's a really good point. This conversation's just going
everywhere. It's in so many directions.
Yeah, but of how customer service, or a term we use at Lofty is the guest experience, is so crucial to the coffee experience, where
you can't separate them.
Yeah, and that's what's setting us apart from a lot of these other shops that would be considered second wave or Starbucks.
Go on.
No, you please.
But adding to what you just said, and going back to what we were talking about with regards to the struggle that people are having, particularly women, are facing and have always faced in these kinds of industries. If you're in the wrong place, none of that will come together.
Yeah.
There will be egos that are getting in the way of you being able to deliver on that guest experience. And people will be trying to squash you so that they can be the person that is recognized as the rock star, right? If you're in the right place, the focus is on the guest's experience, not on the employee's experience of what the experience that the guest is having is.
Yeah, completely. And I think, like, to I guess round it out a little bit, something that we briefly touched on before we recorded, and we're like, let's wait for it, is just like the willingness for us all to have a conversation.
Oh yeah.
And I think we talked about this a little bit of like, oh well, you're right, you're wrong, I'm the good person here and you are a sexist asshole. Like, I think it's just so, and this goes on, and this is how I think about racism in America and sexism in America, of just like, be more accepting of everyone, even if you don't have the same insight as them, or you don't have the same opinion as them. Is that if you can have a conversation, maybe you can learn something, maybe they can learn something, and that's that 1 inch to us being a better society.
Oh yeah. Nobody should leave. And as you say that, I look at my tea bag and it says,
Yogi tea have to say?
Experience will give you the power and confidence to be you. Like, how relevant is that?
Yes! Good timing.
Right? And I was just about to say that nobody should walk away from a conversation feeling that anybody won, if it's a constructive conversation.
Yeah.
They should both walk away from that kind of a challenging conversation feeling, I just got fed. I feel inspired. I want to open up my mind even more to the opinions of other people, because I didn't walk away from that feeling like I had been proven wrong. I've walked away from that conversation feeling that I grew a little bit.
Yeah, maybe exactly.
And I think that the social justice warriors of the world are doing themselves a disservice. And there's a lot of them in our industry.
Yeah.
I want to clarify that. I don't know that there's necessarily a lot of them in our industry. They're the loudest in our industry.
Yeah.
And the social justice warriors are doing themselves a disservice by beating this fucking drum so loud that they can't hear what anybody else is saying. That goes back to that thing of, I feel really weird putting my hand in front of your face.
It's okay. I feel like it's like that's making a point, really.
And that's the thing. What they're saying is, stop talking. They're putting their hand up so close to your face to cut you off from anything that you might have to say. And I feel like what are these people going to think about the way that they belittled people's opinions 10 years from now? They're missing an opportunity to have a conversation with someone. And it's not necessarily that they're missing a conversation to have, they're missing the opportunity to have a conversation with somebody who is going to teach them something. No.
Yeah.
They're missing the opportunity to connect with someone through conversation over differing ideas.
Completely. And just also understanding different, we're all such dynamic people who have lived different lives and have gone through different things to lead us to where we are now in this crazy fucking place. But
it's weird as
it's
fuck,
like,
man.
if we can't have any empathy for the other person's perspective, like I just don't see how we're going to move forward. And so I think ultimately, to like kind of tie this all together again, is just be really open-minded. And this goes for anything in coffee, that being technique and science. Like, I try to question everything. And that's how I've learned as much as I have in the short period of time that I've been in coffee. I've only been for almost 6 years now. But
I love that you think that that's a short time, because I'm seeing people who are like roasting for 6 months, calling themselves master roasters. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, well, I think that it's because of how much I've learned in each, like, even what I just competed in January, and how much I've learned from that experience after having worked in the industry for 5 years. Like, I feel like you never can know everything, and if I can just keep that mindset and always be a child and always be a baby and always learn something new,
you're winning.
At the end, exactly.
Absolutely.
At the end of all of this, like, I'll have experienced a life, and I don't know.
You are so far beyond your years, Siri. Seriously, it's encouraging. I feel like I got to a point in the industry where I was super jaded. I guess, I'm in my early 40s now, and I've done a lot of shit. I've been in a couple of different industries, and I wasn't there for 5 seconds. Like, I've had 3 careers in 3 different decades. And I always struggled in those industries to try and find my path. And I felt so much pushback from particularly the people in my generation that were so closed off to conversation. And what's happening now is a lot of the people in my generation now, which is Gen X, are really open to these conversations. It's fantastic. They're, a lot of people who had treated me like shit in the past are coming back into my life and saying, I just want to apologize because I was too close-minded to see what the fuck I was doing.
Yeah.
Can we have a conversation about this now? And they're delicious conversations. They're fantastic. A lot of it is because I get a little bit of my sense of like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy.
Yeah. You're like, thank you.
And then I tell them to fuck off.
Yeah.
No. But I'm really, really encouraged. I was discouraged about a year and a half ago when all the Trump shit was happening, which incidentally was when a couple of years when I landed here was when it was all starting, and this whole social justice warrior movement started to come up. I became really concerned for us as an industry as well as us as humanity, in that they were trying to squash an evolution that we've taken thousands of years to get to, where people are starting to become open enough where they're talking.
Yeah.
And in come the social justice warriors are trying to shut everybody up with their loud drum beating.
Yeah, and it's weird for me where, like, that's my generation. And, like, while I see what they're trying to do, and, like,
you're not of that.
Yeah, and it's tricky because, like, I definitely have friends who are, and I feel like I think we briefly talked about this before we were live, but kind of finding where you fit in there, because it's kind of like you're with us or you're not. And I'm like, I am with you because I want these things, but is this how we're going to make that happen?
Because the strategy that you've got is great for making noise, but what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
It's like the Occupy movement. It was great for creating the noise, but what the fuck did you achieve?
Yeah.
You had no long-term strategy.
Exactly. And so that's where I'm like in this place where like, it brings up a lot of these complicated questions of like, okay, what do we do to make a change politically and like socially? And it's not, I'm not gonna lie, I don't have the answers, and I don't think a lot of us have the answers, but if we can work together, and that being with people who don't necessarily agree with you, that will definitely at least start some type of movement. And
what you're saying is fantastic. I'll give you an example of a situation that I experienced from a millennial. And before I talk about this, I just want to finish my thought off before, in that I'm so encouraged when I meet people like you and my new friend Noah.
Yeah, Noah.
Shout out to Noah.
Sup, Noah?
that I met on the plane back from Seattle.
I have a feeling he has something to do with this.
With this
whole situation of me being here, I don't know.
He kind of does, because we were talking about a few things, and I was thinking, I hope I bump into Siri after I had this conversation with him, only because I felt like you and I hadn't seen each other in a long time, and then you just fucking happened to turn up at the cafe I was having a coffee at, which I haven't been to in 6 months, which was great. Anyway, but having conversations with people like you and with Noah, who I can't wait to get on the podcast, because it was such a great conversation I had with him, because it brings me balance to the idea that I meet so many millennials in coffee that are beating the social justice warrior drum. And then to hear conversations from people like you and Noah, where you're like, I don't have any answers. I have so many questions, and I'm just hungry to have these conversations with people of whatever their role is in the coffee industry, to find out what their opinions are, and how can all these conversations be formative in my process. And so it was really exciting, and I think I'm meeting more and more of them as we go. An example of the opposite of that is when I have conversations with people who say, so people who have like a cafe or a beverage company, cold brew company, whatever, and they've made a decision that they're only going to use roasters of insert minority group here. I'm only going to use black roasters. I'm only going to use minority roasters. I'm only going to use lesbian roasters. I'm only going to use trans roasters. I'm like, well, that's great, but what are you going to do after the second roaster you use? Because there ain't fucking that many of them.
Yeah.
More importantly, though, that's non-inclusive. You can't beat I'm all about inclusion drum and be non-inclusive. I'm only going to use black roasters is non-inclusive.
Yeah. And then that goes to the, like, what are you trying to do here?
Right.
Are you trying to make a space that is specifically for black roasters? Because that could be something that's really interesting, actually. But is that what you're trying to do, or are you trying to make us? Are we trying to create equality and inclusiveness?
Right.
And I think that it's kind of. Sorry.
No, I hear you. I see what you're trying to say. Like, are we cutting off our nose to spite our face just so that we can make the statement of I'm supporting only black roasters? Well, that's great, but again, that's a short-term solution with no end game.
Okay, and I'm coming to what I was trying to say. Okay, so I think if we can accept the history specifically Black people have in America, and then also
which is not devastating and really difficult to get your head around. And especially being someone who's come into this gone like, what the fuck?
And it's like, I think that we need to have more of just an understanding and acceptance for our past, but also that being cultural acceptance of other cultures, and then ultimately as well as like equality of the sexes. I think as long as we can acknowledge that, we can then include it, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm not making a good point.
You are making sense. Like, unless we and correct me if I'm wrong. Here. What I hear that you're saying is we have to acknowledge the past,
and we also have to acknowledge the difference. I think we also were talking about this, the difference between men and women. Like as much as we want equality, we are different, and that's a good thing, I think, where like that brings balance to our crazy fucking world.
I mean, you and I were talking off air. We were talking about the difference between, like, what are people trying to achieve? What are social justice warriors or anyone with an agenda? Sorry, is that me playing footsies with you again? Sorry. What is the agenda that people are trying to achieve when they have these missions, right? And when they do that, are they aiming for equal opportunity, or are they aiming for equality of outcome? And those are two very different things. One of those things is inspiring and promotes choice in everything. It promotes opportunity. The other one is destructive and limiting. And
it kind of like, I feel like it almost deserves the hard work of like, okay, well, we all just get the same thing because we're all human. Because we're human. Like, what if I worked much harder than this person? And what if I put in more time and more energy and more passion? And
the idea of equality of outcome, for anyone who's listening in and doesn't understand, it means that whatever happens in society, everybody ends up with the same. And equal opportunity means that everyone should have the opportunity to achieve so everyone should have the same opportunity to achieve based on what they contribute to that journey and what they bring to the table, right?
Totally.
Those two things are very, very different. And I feel that social justice warriors are going out there and say there should be an equality of outcome. Everyone should have the same. And that's not serving anybody. These people who keep saying to me, if we want equality, people of privilege should take a step back so that people who don't have the same privilege can take a step forward. And I'm like, that is horseshit. The way that I see it, my privilege, I can use that to help usher people forward. I can create paths through Map It Forward. If one more motherfucker contacts me and says to me, there's you with your white privilege. What white privilege? Asshole, I'm an Arab that was born in Australia. I certainly have more privilege than other people. And there are other people who have more privilege than I do. But we need to get off this bandwagon of trying to measure ourselves against somebody who has less. And stop feeling guilty for it. Use what you have to help other people. That's called decency. It's called compassion and kindness and all that kind of shit. Like, if you, rather than, and what I experienced coming up in the coffee industry was that a lot of men would feel intimidated by me. And so what they did was they would crush me so that they could feel better about themselves. That's dysfunctional.
So quickly on the privilege thing, because something that I try to wrap my head around is not only in coffee, but maybe in a bigger sense of society, to allow space for women and LGBTQ and trans and Black people and people of color in general. I do feel that people with privilege ultimately, to have that equality, are going to have to let go of some of that privilege, and not let it go, like not have privilege, because we should all have privilege to, but I just think that.
Tell me what you mean by that, because that's a really interesting. We're about to dive into another hour. I'm fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you okay?
Mm-hmm. I'm doing good.
This is a fascinating subject for me, because when we're talking about letting go of privilege, what do you particularly mean by that?
So let's say, let's think of like a man and a woman.
Yep.
A man is going to have to let go of this, like, maybe let's talk about what you were talking about, the rock star man in the cafe. Rock star barista, everyone's in love with him. He's going to have to let go of some of that to allow you to be a rock star.
So
I think it's almost like it's almost an ego thing. And are you okay?
Yeah, I just needed to swing my hair.
Honestly, I feel like I'm doing a really bad job at making this, because this is really important. I think.
Really is. But what you're saying is really helping me understand, because I've been trying to get my head around the psyche around this.
Yeah,
I hear so many millennials
people say that we need to like let go of
privilege. And what I wonder is, what do people actually mean by the word privilege? Because I think using the word privilege is the same as using a word like good or bad or right or wrong. These things are judgments. One person's understanding of what is good may be somebody else's understanding of what is right. Yeah. So a white supremacist thinks that they're doing the right thing by calling themselves a white nationalist, and we want to make America great again and make sure that we don't lose the whiteness of America, right? Yeah. That to them is good, but to everybody else who's not a white nationalist, which is just a fucking strange word, Michelle Wolf did you see what the address she just did? She's a comedian. She just did an address.
I don't think I saw this.
For the correspondence dinner, and she said, white nationalists she was so fucking great. White people who call themselves white nationalists, she said that's a strange word for white supremacist or Nazi. It's like calling a pedophile a kid friend.
Oh God. Oh God.
Harvey Weinstein, a ladies' man.
Oh jeez.
So I'm not going to use the word white nationalist. So what I was alluding to there, sorry to jump in there, but
I think you're helping me, because I think this is something I think about a lot, but I have a hard time putting into words, if I'm being honest with anyone who's listening to this, and I want to talk about it more.
That's the point, right?
What is okay? So, I don't know if we want to get so political, but let's say me as a white woman, I am going to be given more opportunities than maybe a black woman.
And so,
because of all of that history, and because of them being suppressed for hundreds of years.
Right. And so I'm not saying that's not happening.
Yeah.
Right? What I'm trying to get my head around and understanding is, what do we mean when we say that your privilege is what is creating those opportunities? And so the color of your skin, if that was the only thing that was creating these opportunities, we wouldn't have a black USBC champion. And we did last year, right? I'm a science person. I'm also like a consciousness person. And so for me, I always look at these things from the sense of, well, if this was the definition of something, then it would be true in every single case.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. Yeah. So when we're looking at this word of privilege being associated with skin color, that's not correct. I don't believe that that's correct.
I think I can understand that a little bit, just because I think from the little that we've learned about each other today, we both have had, not the easiest upbringings.
Right.
And, I've had, man, I'm because I don't want to negate people who don't have as much opportunity as me.
But let go of that guilt for a second.
Yeah.
And because we stigmatize these conversations with this guilt that we associate with ourselves because of what came before that we didn't have a hand in creating.
Yeah.
We want to create a more inclusive society for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Using your analogy of the rock star, the guy, I don't want him to feel that he has to give up that rock star position
For you to have it.
for me to have it, because what he needs to give up is not his rock star status. He needs to drop his ego for himself, not for me. It's a situation of, if we're saying to somebody, you need to take a step back so that somebody else can take a step forward, is that what we're actually saying to people?
Yeah, because I think I'm like almost seeing it where yeah, it's almost our responsibility to give a hand to those people that don't have it and bring them up with us.
But that's different than you taking a step back.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying people, so there are roadblocks in the way for everybody. There is always somebody else that is far more privileged than us, right? With all the privilege, for lack of a better term, that I have, I've had a fucking tough road to get here. And I still continue to meet so many barriers that stop me from getting to the places that I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
Or they delay me at least, because ain't fucking nothing stopping me.
Fuck.
But I got there, I got to that mindset from realizing that there are people who have more than me, and their position intimidates me. Not only does it intimidate me, but it makes me feel that I can't. And I had to get out of that mindset. We're in a day and age where there's no reason, none whatsoever, that if you're feeling that you're in a position of I can't, that you can't find a way out.
You can.
Even if those incremental steps are tiny, tiny, tiny steps, and they take a long time to happen. Jared and I were talking about Cardi B.
I remember. I love her.
Do you?
I do. I really could relate to Jared on this. I am you might not like assume that looking at me, but I'm a huge hip hop, like love hip hop.
That doesn't shock me. I was on your Instagram, like, yeah, she loves the latest Jay-Z album. I collect hip hop records. Those are usually the shows that I go to because they're just so live. It's awesome. I'm actually going to the TDE championship tour. It's like Kendrick Lamar, Schoolboy Q, SZA. Wow.
I'm so excited.
Are you going on your own?
I'm going with a friend.
Nice.
Yeah, it'll be awesome.
Nice. That's fantastic. Because, you know, Lauryn Hill's coming out here again.
I hear, because I remember she came here with Nas
yes,
a few years ago and I missed it. I was like, damn
yeah,
it.
I know, right? But yeah.
I hear she might be making new music, which is like...
Don't tease.
I know. Someone said that. I was like, she always says that.
Yeah. With her 25 children. But...
Cardi B.
So the thing with Cardi B is that she was in a situation... Like any person who becomes a great entrepreneur, she came from underprivilege. And when I say underprivilege, I mean it in the sense of the privilege that most of people, that some people enjoy, in the sense of being able to make decisions for yourself of this is what I'm going to do today, and this is what I'm going to eat today, and I'm going to go to this other place today. She couldn't have those because she was in a severely dysfunctional relationship.
Yeah. And
she decided to find a way out, which was fucking terrifying for her. And it was hard. And she decided, I'm going to take the baby steps that are necessary to make my situation better. Right? And as she started making those changes, for any motherfucker that contacts me to say, oh, it's fine to say this kind of stuff because of look of where you're at, just remember where I've come from. Just remember exactly what I had to scrounge out of just to get here. I had so many struggles. So don't be hitting me up with a whole bunch of hate.
You know what's crazy to think that even people who seem extremely successful or extremely privileged, we all are living a life and we're all going to have struggles, and they might not be equal, but they're still valid.
Absolutely. And so that's the point that I want to make. Like, the idea that you look at someone like Cardi B and you think, well, you know, she clearly had a free ride up here. Like, it was super easy. She didn't. She made the necessary changes to make her life better. And as she gained momentum, people saw that she was a force and wanted to help her.
Yeah.
And that's why I have a problem with people using this idea of privilege as a reason to be held back. Or the idea that anyone that has any level of privilege, I'm hating that word more and more, but anyone who has this idea of privilege saying, I have to take a step back so that other people can take a step forward. No, you are giving them a get out of jail free card that prevents them from learning the lessons in their life of, how do I start getting momentum in my journey? How do I stop blaming all the extra shit that's going on in my life for me not being my best self? Mm-hmm. And we do people a disservice by not motivating them to step up to be their best selves. Yeah. How can I help you be your best self? How can I help you reach the goals that you're trying to get to? I'm not going to do it for you, and I'm not going to pave a fucking garden path for you, but I'm going to help you and be a support to you. That's the best way, in my opinion, for whatever the fuck it's worth. That's the way how we destroy these boundaries of that trans folks are experiencing, and people of color. And look, if this was a color issue, white people wouldn't be experiencing it as well.
Yeah. So I think that I'm really fortunate to this conversation, because I think it's giving me some language to talk about some of these things that have really frustrated me, and about just like how to make a change and how to move forward.
Yeah.
And I think that this whole like throwing out a hand and bringing them with you instead of just like taking yourself out of the picture, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And
I just want to say on that, with your analogy of putting out a hand and bringing them with you, they have to want to come with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, these people who are looking for a free ride and you're a white person, so you should pave a way for me. No. That would mean that I should expect the same thing from a black person. No, man, I got to earn the right to stand and breathe the same air that you breathe. Mm-hmm. No matter what your fucking skin color is. No matter what your circumstance is. If I want to learn from you, if I want to aspire to be like you, I've got to earn the right. And what I mean by earning the right is I have to step outside of my own comfort and be willing and prepared to sit in my discomfort to learn from you.
Yeah.
No matter who you are or what color your skin is, or whether you have tits or whether you have a penis.
Yeah.
That's what the real privilege in this is, that I get to feel comfortable enough with my discomfort to be in your presence.
Yeah.
Because I see that you have something that you can teach me, and that I'm prepared to learn, no matter how uncomfortable it's going to make me about myself.
Yeah, and I think that kind of brings to some points that I've heard you make in some of your other podcasts, is just this vulnerability and willingness to share that with other people, to really like connect with them, because we're all vulnerable. Like, we're all kind of like I can't speak for everyone, but I would assume that we all have fears that maybe hold us back sometimes. And
oh, for sure.
And if we can be honest and open about them, like, maybe you can let those go. And
that's what open-mindedness is, right?
Yeah.
Like, we do ourselves a service. And to anybody who's listening to this and thinking she's talking a whole bunch of horse shit because she clearly has, she doesn't recognize my underprivilege, or whatever the word for opposite of privilege is. She's clearly not recognizing my struggle. Motherfucker, I do.
Yeah.
I have rocked in the fetal position many a time, sitting in the fear of not knowing what comes next. That is about as struggle gets. Feeling this idea of, I feel very alone right now. And I don't know how I'm going to get through this moment. Sometimes it's happened when I've got money. Sometimes it's happened when I don't have money. The money is irrelevant. If that's what you want to class privilege to be, then that's fine. But that's not what privilege is. Real privilege comes from, and when we're talking about privilege in the positive sense, real privilege comes from not being able to be shackled by anything. When you can stand in your true self and know that you have no fear of anything that could happen and no fear of what's coming, that is real privilege.
Yeah.
And I've never met a person like that. I've never met a person who is completely unwavering in whatever the fuck that's coming. So many people do feel that they are like that, but if they were, then they'd be completely enlightened.
Yeah.
And so every single one of us feels this sense of a lack of privilege. If you're defining privilege as arrogance, it's a whole different conversation. Sure,
True.
we've all met that person, that white guy that's on the train that's like, everyone has to pander to my needs. But that's not privilege. That's arrogance.
Yeah.
So we have to start using the right language to describe what we're actually saying. Instead of saying things like privilege, what do you mean by that?
Can I say, so here's something that maybe people may or may not agree with me, but I almost find my struggles, I am very, and maybe fortunate is a better word, but I feel very privileged or fortunate for a lot of the hard shit that I've had to go through.
Yeah, man.
Because it's made me a stronger, better person, I think. And I feel very fortunate to all of it, to all of the struggle.
Because it gives you the life experience that you need to know that no matter what comes your way, you've survived shit before.
Yeah. Or just knowing that I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's truly how I feel, is that whatever happens, I'll figure it out. I started working in the coffee industry making $8.25 an hour.
In New York.
Yeah.
Fuck.
And somehow I did it. And
you get
now,
to the point where you're like, I don't know how I've survived that. And I survived it.
Yeah, and I did, and I know now, like, I don't know. I just really feel that I could do anything. And I know maybe that's like really optimistic, and I think I am an optimist. Like, but I really just...
The point there is that you have proved to yourself, you have a history that's moving in the direction of you building trust with yourself. Like I talk a lot about this idea of building an intimate relationship with yourself.
Oh, I live that. Right. Like, I feel to build any relationship with anyone else, you have to have that foundation with yourself.
And part of that is building an intimate trust relationship with yourself, because the only way that you can feel safe, truly safe, is to have built that trust and gone through shit and know that you backed you and that you were the one that got you out of it. Going through the end of a marriage and being ousted by a whole community and having to navigate your way through a life having no more compasses, like no reference point. I was in a whole new country, knowing nobody.
You're talking about when you moved to the US?
The first time.
Yeah.
This was about 10 years ago. The end of a marriage. You want to talk vulnerability? This is serious vulnerability. The end of a marriage. Of course, my family being Arabs, that was not okay because I ended the marriage, and I was shunned.
He Arab as well?
No, he was half Greek, half Maso.
Okay.
Beautiful human. The marriage ended because I realized that I didn't believe in marriage anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Which was shit for him. And there was a lot more to it than that, but all of that led me to the point of, this is not the best life that I believe each of us could be living.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the nuts and bolts of why it ended. That was not okay for my community,
mm-hmm.
because that's
not how it's done.
My family are Catholic, and it's super important for us to honor those kinds of commitments that we've made in front of God.
Mm-hmm.
So my decisions were not okay, and me leaving that life, I don't think that I assessed what being on my own would actually do to me. And it's straight up, it's taken me, it was the last couple of months now that I've come to realize that a lot of my trauma
mm-hmm.
came from me no longer feeling that I had an umbilical cord to anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the struggle that I experienced trying to fit in anywhere. Like, no, I don't fit in here. No, I don't fit in here. No, I don't fit in here. It was like tumbling in outer space with having no idea where I was going to end up.
Yeah.
And the tumbling, well, the traveling through outer space hasn't stopped. I'm now no longer tumbling. I feel like I'm like, okay, everything's a possibility. I have no idea where this shit's going to end up, but my journey of tumbling and free falling and trying to understand, so where am I and what direction is ahead of me or
mm-hmm.
whatever, all of that came from the fact that I let go of gravity, and I decided I was going to figure this out for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to start tumbling in order to learn how to not tumble.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I stopped tumbling, I was like, okay, so I'm starting to get some perspective on this. And that journey has led me to, okay, I want to go that way. And now I can propel myself that way. Or I want to go that way. Oh, no, that's not working. But I know that if it doesn't work, I've proven to myself that I can just pivot to a different direction.
Yeah.
Right? If we just look at people and say, your privilege means that you should be making a way for me, you're completely dismissing what that person's journey is.
Mm-hmm.
And what gold awaits you if instead of coming up with a bullshit statement like that, you engage that person in conversation and find out what the fuck got them there.
Yeah.
And help them express to you, how did you use your journey to get this? Because we can see people who have gone through shit to get to where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then we know those people who have either got a silver spoon or just arrogant assholes. We know those people. And I guess where I find my frustration is having someone like me lumped into the same privilege category as someone like that.
Yeah.
I worked my ass off. I cried tears of blood just to get to a space in my life where I'm like, I got this. And I got this means anything that comes my way, I know I can handle it.
And what's interesting is how this reflects back to what we were talking about of just having a conversation.
Yeah.
Because you can't assume just because of the way you look, you've had your road paved for you. And I think that just ultimately goes to equality, because we can't assume that every Black person has had the worst life. Like, you can't
No.
And so
Morgan Freeman puts it great. I don't know who was interviewing him, but they asked him the question. They would, it could have been, what's his name? from The Daily Show, Trevor Noah. And I think he said to him something about, do you think that racism is as big a deal today as it was in the past? Or do you think that black people have it just as hard now as they did in the 60s? And he said, no, I don't. And he said, man, what do you mean by that? And he said, if that were the case, I wouldn't have the career that I have, and you wouldn't have the career that you have. He said, the difference is I made this happen for me. I didn't wait for anyone and didn't ask for permission. And Morgan Freeman didn't start acting until he was in his late 40s. Like, people need to stop waiting for permission to live their best possible life.
Yeah.
Yes, we've all got shit that we just have to uncomfortably learn. But navigate your way through it. And
find people who maybe have this privilege who can help you or who want to help you.
The right kind of privilege though. Like find, and I like to replace that with find people who can mentor you.
Let's not use that word.
Yeah. But do you see why I have such a problem with it though?
Yeah, I can understand.
Because like clearly I don't think about anything. No. Clearly I'm a thinker. I think about lots of stuff, right? And I was fascinated when this word privilege started to show up. And it's only been like the last couple years that it's been as overused as it is. And I'm like, well, great. All right, you're using this word. What do you mean by it? Like, are we clearly defining the words that we're using to drive an agenda that doesn't seem to be going anywhere? And I would love it to go somewhere because it's an important conversation.
Yeah.
We need to stop stifling people, but people need to stop stifling themselves. That was why Map It Forward was created. How can we help people be their own champion and map a path that if they know they're going in this direction and there are people that can help them get into that direction, how can we help them see that vision? Yeah. How can we teach them to be the person that drives their own career forward? That was the whole point behind it, because I was getting so frustrated with hearing this bullshit of people saying, everyone needs to take a step back so I can take a step forward. Bitch, please. Take a step forward and don't wait for anybody else to take a step back. What is that teaching anybody?
It's all you. I mean, you manifest your own reality. I really do believe that. And you're the only one who's going to create that for yourself.
Yeah. So I'm really encouraged by people as we hit 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Wow. It's almost getting dark in here.
Yeah. Right. But I'm really impressed when I see people that are willing to have, particularly millennials.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little like nervous of what's gonna happen because of this conversation, but in a good way. Where like, if this causes people to like reach out to me and I get to have conversations with more people and we get to define this word that's overly used of privilege, like I'm excited for that. Like a little nervous, but I'm also excited. And I mean, anyone who knows me, I'm just excited about life. So like
but with that, right, I want to say to you that let's say somebody came to you and said, what you said on that podcast with that crazy bitch Lee was wrong. The response to that is, okay, great. What do you mean by wrong?
Yeah, no,
not
completely.
What was it that I said that was wrong, but what do you mean by wrong? Do you mean that you disagree with what I said? And I would hate to think that that means that what you're saying is I can't have a differing opinion from you.
Yeah. And then honestly, what I would ask is, what's their opinion? And can we come to some middle ground that we can at least understand each other a little bit? And again, something that's recurred in this conversation is maybe we can both see each other's side a little bit and learn something.
And you won't be able to control that. But what you can do is, if it's becoming a dysfunctional conversation, peace out on it. And don't be scared to peace out on somebody who's being an arrogant asshole. it doesn't mean that that's the last time they're going to have a conversation with you, but it does mean that the next time they have a conversation with you, they're going to think about it. They really will. They'll be like, why did she talk to me like that? You challenging someone is going to stop their thought patterns from a neural path perspective. It will stop their thought patterns in their path. It will make somebody have to think differently. Much like when most people who are hearing this, who have never thought of what they actually mean when they use the word privilege, they have to start thinking about it differently for the first time.
Yeah.
That's not a terrible thing.
I think that challenging the way that we think is, again, how we're going to grow and evolve as people.
And I encourage anyone who wants to have this conversation with me, come on the podcast and have it with me. I would love to, only because I want to grow as much as everyone wants to grow. I want to help be part of what helps not just our industry, but anyone get into the habit of having constructive conversation that breaks down any kinds of barriers that prevents everyone in that situation being fed.
Yeah.
Because you can have conversations with people where nobody agrees, but everyone walks away from that saying, that was so meaty and delicious. That's a vegan saying that. But you know what I mean by that. You know, I can have conversations with religious folks, and I am no religion. But I can have conversations with religious people where I walk away feeling like they really challenged me.
Yeah. There was some substance to this interaction.
Yeah.
Versus just, I'm right, you're wrong.
And we live in an era where people need to be right. There was a conversation on my Facebook page today. It started yesterday. It was fantastic. Of all I did, so I went through this phase where I was legit depressed when all the Trump stuff started happening.
Yeah, I think we all were a little bit.
Oh yeah. And like I was down. Like I was speaking to one friend. She's like, "Lee, I've never heard you this low." And I realized that I was addicted to the news cycle, and I realized I have to get off this. And I decided I was going to change my social media interactions on Facebook, and I was going to post a rad human of the day post every day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I've kept it up. It's been a year and a half. And people tell me how they love these posts, right? So I meant to post yesterday this Michelle Wolf thing. And so I posted it. So I meant to post it the day that she did it, but I didn't get to. I posted it last night. There were people in Australia who hadn't seen it that were reposting it, saying how fantastic it was. There was one Australian who lives in LA now, who is now an American citizen, who started vomiting all over everybody's comments about how such a typical Democrat. Of course you listen to CNN. Of course you read Huffington Post. Obama's an asshole. Hillary's evil. Like vomit, 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 vomit. I have some really smart friends. I have lots of really smart friends. I've fashioned my life around how do I eliminate dramatic, egocentric people and just have really open-minded friends. Every person that commented about how great it was and how totally next level shit, and look, she's calling them out on a whole bunch of stuff. This is really uncomfortable to watch, but it's true. And she would just vomit over everybody's comments, and not one single person responded to her. And that's what constructive conversation is. Like when the loudest person in the room is vomiting rhetoric and bullshit all over the conversation just for the sake of being the fucking loudest person in the room, they become the child in the room.
And you can just kind of disassociate.
Right?
Like you can.
The adults are going to continue to have the conversation. But this little child, she happens to be a multi-millionaire who sees herself as better than a lot of the people around her because she's ticked a lot of the boxes and she's made a lot of money and she's moved to LA and made a name for herself, let's just say. And she was someone who I happened to meet when I was in LA. She friended me when she was moving to LA because she needed Aussies to meet. She wanted to meet other Aussies. And I unfollowed her and didn't even realize that we were still friends on Facebook. And then to hear that she was so Republican, like alt-right Republican-ish. Like he's doing the right thing for this country. He's, making America great again. He's done everything he promised he would do, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's great if that's what you wanted in him, but that doesn't eliminate the other side of the conversation.
No, not at all.
That's what constructive discussion is about. Like I have friends who are Republicans. And honestly, I didn't even understand what that meant before 2 years ago. I didn't understand it. I was not into Australian politics. It's boring as bat fuck, right? But now I understand the differences and I can still appreciate my Republican friends.
Yeah.
A lot of my Republican friends are open-minded about.
I was going to say,
situation.
are they willing to have a conversation about it? And then that's just how you be human and be people and like just
don't be
adults. And
right. And so these social justice warriors that exist a lot in our industry need to take like a chill pill and calm the fuck down and enter like this thing that we've talked a lot about today, which is this idea of how do we have constructive conversations that are inclusive, first of all.
Yeah.
Check your language. Like, is my other things that I'm advocating for. There's a cafe in Melbourne. It's called Handsome Her. Have you heard about it?
I have.
This is amazing and not in a great way. I love that they stand for something, but taxing men, a man tax, what a way to be not inclusive.
Yeah.
I love that you stand for something, but surely there's a better way to have the conversation around what you're trying to say than to tax men for being men. I have been shat on by men my whole life. And I can see that this is like the worst way that you're actually going to get men on board to open their minds. Don't fucking tax them because they've got a penis.
Oh man.
Like you're not getting your agenda across that way. So
yeah. And so something that I just want to, if we want to wrap this up, I think
I think we're there.
Machine a little into this chair, but I think that we had a lot of what you would say juicy, meaty conversation where maybe we didn't get to a total conclusion, but I think what we did,
this is a lifelong conversation.
Yeah, and I think what we did is just like, for anyone out there, I think that we're both involved in the community enough where it seems like we're both very rational people who want to have a conversation, and I'm all about like peace, love, and positivity, and I just want to bring that to every person that I get to interact with, and I want to hear your opinion and I want to share mine and have a conversation and continue that conversation until we can make little baby steps to change, really.
Dude, I couldn't agree more, and I hope that as you progress through your career, you'll come back again and again and again and keep us informed on like what your musings are and how you're finding that you're navigating your way through this. And I can't wait to hear what some of the backlash is from this conversation.
Me neither, honestly.
You've always got the option to phone a friend. You've got my number. Give me a call. Thank you so much, Siri. This was
you, Lee.
so
this was
much
fun. And we'll get Noah on here soon.
I can't wait. Noah, you're up next. I should give him a call and make sure that happens. Thank you, love. It was an absolute